What is happening, everybody? Welcome to episode number 27 of the Bards of Gaming podcast. I am back for the most part at the moment. Things have been a little bit crazy for the last couple months. Nothing bad. I'm okay. But this week, we're going to cover Dragon Quest IV. And before we get into the episode, I just want to kind of explain what's been going on lately, why I haven't been around for any of those who do follow the show with regularity. I very much do appreciate everything, all the support, every nice message that's been sent to me. But just to get into things really quickly, it's nothing serious, like I said, but a lot was kind of going on in my career and school. Like I was at the tail end of my associate's degree, so that was taking a lot of my focus because I was trying to finish that out with good grades and that on top of working my crazy schedule, it was a lot. So, as well as trying to coordinate friends to get together and do episodes with, and we all have busy schedules, we're all adults. It was crazy for a little while. So, I kind of decided I needed to take a break because I was hitting some pretty bad burnout. And for any of those of you who have hit that kind of burnout, you know what I'm talking about. It's just creatively, I was drained. I had nothing in me. I had no desire to create anything, and I just needed to stop. So I needed to just take a break, take a breath, and just kind of get my shit together. So I took some time to, spend time with family, friends, play some more games. That way I had something more to talk about. And that is what led me to Dragon Quest IV. I have been a pretty big fan, actually, of the Dragon Quest games for only the last couple of years, because I played the first game. Actually, I'll be honest, I started with the third game, which I will eventually cover the original trilogy, the Erdrick Saga. And if for those of you who know, the third game is technically the first game. So I played through those three games and had a phenomenal time. And got a little bit burnt out on the Dragon Quest JRPG type series, so I took a break for a while. And during my hiatus from the show, I wanted something that was simple, kind of easy to pick up, put down, and a good single player adventure. And I decided to pick up Dragon Quest IV on my phone because I've actually played through all of the Dragon Quest games that I've played so far on mobile. And I gotta say, they have done a fantastic job porting them to mobile. So, yeah, I really want to commend Square Enix and those of the developers who ported it to mobile. They did a really great job. But getting into Dragon Quest IV, because I don't want to ramble about myself and my life for the past few months. There's really not a whole lot to talk about. I just got burnt out. So, for those of you who have watched or have listened to the show in the past, kind of the way that this show is broken down. And I'm sorry, I am going to ramble a little bit because part of what stopped me from feeling creative and wanting to do the show for a little while was I kind of lost direction of where I wanted the show to go. So if you've listened to a lot of the episodes from the beginning, you could kind of hear me in the intros talking about how, it was, the show was kind of going to go in this direction, then it was going to go in this direction. And, I'm kind of trying to land on where I want it to go, what kind of show I want it to be. And I think the last half a dozen episodes or so is kind of where I really felt it was taking shape. And I really just like the idea of it being just a journal, just like a gaming journal, and where I can just kind of like dump my thoughts, my opinions, my likes, my dislikes about a game, my experiences, and share it with all of you who care to listen. And I have a really good time just talking about games. I don't care if I'm just talking to myself. It's fun to reminisce about the games I've played and the times I've had within these expansive universes and stuff. So it's great to have friends on to do it with me. I love talking about these games with my friends, but simply put, there's a lot of games out there that I've played that my friends haven't. So, and I'm not going to expect them to buy a game to play it or spend whatever time to talk about it with me. So, I'm just going to do plenty of episodes on my own. I was doing kind of like, some indie games on my own and whatever, but there's a lot of games out there that I've played that simply put, like I said, my friends haven't. And Dragon Quest series is one of them. So, I very much enjoy these games. I would love to talk about them. So I think what I'm going to do is really just start making these episodes just my video game journal. And I'll still try to drop episodes every 2 weeks. I really do want to keep it going as much as possible. And I want to have fun with it again. So I think that, you know, maybe not having to do every episode with a friend will take a lot of that pressure off of me, and I just want to talk about games. So if any of you want to talk about games, I mean, feel free to message me. I don't know how many people I really want to have on the show with me. I don't know, because scheduling is kind of a bitch, but I love to talk games, and if you want to talk games with me, feel free to reach out to me on my Instagram, which is definitely the easiest place to find me, but you can also reach out to me on Twitter or X. Shoot me an email, whatever. And all links to everything can be found at thebardsofgamingpodcast.com. So, yeah, with that being said, welcome to my video game journal. And this week, after all my rambling, we are going to sit down and talk about Dragon Quest IV. So, to jump straight into things, I had a really good time with this game overall. But there are a couple of things that I kind of didn't love about it. And if you've listened to previous episodes, you know that I'll typically break it down into, I'll talk about what I don't like about the game first, and then what I do like about the game, and then kind of wrap it up in a review. And that's not really going to change. That's just the format I like. But, so to get into the dislikes, there was one thing about this game that really bugged me, and it was in, I think, chapter 4? 3 or 4. I guess so this game is broken down into 5 main chapters, and the first couple chapters, like I think the first 4 chapters introduce you to the different primary protagonists and characters that can be in your party, and you get a bit of a background sequence of character development of who they are. And one of the characters that you get to play as, I believe it's chapter 4. I don't remember exactly. But you play this guy named Tornico, and I probably butchered the way you said his name, but he's a merchant, and it's a fun chapter because it's a real rags to riches kind of story. And when you start out, you're kind of like the town bum, right? Like everybody makes fun of you, and your wife, God bless her, she sticks by you and she believes in you and she supports you, and you're this salesman who has grand aspirations of being like the best merchant in the world, the biggest merchant in the world. And all you are in the beginning of this chapter, though, is this lowly kind of town bum who works at the local weapons dealer, and you have this job that is to just, you're basically working at like a weapons pawn shop. And so customers, you do your daily grind. Customers will come in and offer to sell you weapons, and then you can accept or deny, and then other customers will come in and try to buy weapons at different prices, and you have to kind of gauge like what is a fair price for what. And so like all you really have to do though for this chapter is go into the store as a customer and look at the prices of each item that you could buy it for, and you just want to try to sell it for the same price and then buy the same items for less. It's really not a hard thing to do, but it gets a little bit more complicated later in the chapter, which I am going to talk about. But you do this, you do like your daily job, your daily grind, making pennies in commission to try to save up enough money to buy a weapon of your own. And then once you can finally buy a weapon of your own, then you start to go outside of the town and kill monsters, get more coin, go back, buy more weapons, better weapons and armor and stuff, and then go back out. And you're if you've played any Dragon Quest game, you know the grind. Like, you start with nothing, no like shit weapons. You step outside of the town, you walk outside right around the gate, and then you kill a few monsters, get a few coins, go back in, buy the next best weapon, rinse and repeat until you have the best weapons and armor for that section, and then you move on to the next town. Well, this chapter did it a little bit differently than any game previously had done, which I thought was great, because when you're playing as Tornico, you have a tendency to find armor and weapons and stuff as more drops from monsters than you would with any other character in any other game. So as you collect these drops, then you go back into the town and sell it. So you are beginning to be this merchant, this grand merchant. And as you as you progress and you walk through the world and you're discovering different cities and towns, you find this one kingdom that they have no armor in their kingdom. So you're tasked with trying to sell any armor you find to this salesperson, or to this, the armory in the castle, that will buy it at a typically higher price than any other armor merchant or whatever, any other shop in the game would. So you're going around the map, you're finding armor from drops, and you're also going and buying armor once you have enough money to buy it in bulk. You can go to another town, buy the best armor that you can find, and then you're going back to this merchant at this, or in the armorer at this castle, and you're trying to sell it to him for a higher cost. But every time you talk to him, he gives you a different number. So it's this buy low, sell high mechanic that, I'm gonna be honest with you, I grinded it for like 3 hours, because some of these items, some of these things that you need to do in this game are tens of thousands of dollars. And you have to talk, like, there's one piece of armor that you can go to the next town over, and at this point you can just teleport, you can fast travel between towns, which is great. But there's one town you can go to, and there's one piece of armor that you buy it for, like, I don't know, 1,200 coins or whatever. And so you spend all your money buying as many of these pieces of armor as you can. Say you buy like 10, right? So you spend like 12 grand on armor. And now you want to go back to this kingdom and sell it. But every time you talk to him, like I said, it gives you a different number. So he'll throw you numbers anywhere from, like, 500 coins to 2,200 coins. Well, obviously you want to try to aim to get the 2,200 coins to make the best profit on this armor. But you have to do this with every single piece of armor that you just bought. So you're not buying 10 pieces of armor and then selling 10 pieces of armor in bulk. No, you are doing you are chatting with this guy 30 fucking times at least until he gives you the price you want. So it's really just like, it's luck of the draw. And there were times where I would talk to him once or twice and he would give me like a really high number and I would sell it. There was other times where he would talk to me, I would have to talk to him like 50, 60 times before he gave me a good number. And you just sit there and you're just tapping and tapping and tapping and tapping on the screen until he finally gives you a decent number. So that one thing in this game, that is like the one thing about this game that really just kind of grinded my gears. It was frustrating. I feel like there could have been much better ways to do that. But I also understand that this game came out in like 1990 on the Super Nintendo, and it was just product of the time, and all things considered, aside from that, it is still a fantastic game. So that one buy low, sell high mechanic, which is a very small portion of this game, all things considered, I just feel like took way too long for what it was. Because you're also trying, like, one of the things that you're trying to save up money for is for your own house. Like, so you can buy a shop in a different kingdom and like move your family from, the original place that you started being like a lowly fucking merchant into the big kingdom where all the big bustling trade is happening. So that costs like 35 grand. And then after you do that, sorry everybody, Bucky is just chirping behind me, so I can't get her to stop. She's just having a grand old time. But anyway, so the moving your family to Endor, that's like 35 grand. Then after that, you need to give 60 grand to this old guy who's trying to build a tunnel from one kingdom to the other. And that is a major plot point. So that's not an optional objective. Like, you now need to save up basically like $100,000. So you have to do a lot of this buy low, sell high. And now, Dragon Quest games are absolutely no stranger to grinding. Like, since the beginning, you have had to grind for money and XP all the time. Like, but I think that the way that they did it for this mechanic was just a little bit too reliant on RNG. So maybe it's just me being petty because I had to spend so much time doing it. Maybe it's just because I had bad RNG. If any of you had to spend, were able to do this in like less than 20 minutes, please let me know because I will call you out as a liar. But yeah, like I said, there's really, Dragon Quest games are no stranger to grinding. And I think that another thing that I didn't really care for in this game, which I don't know, I have mixed feelings about it because it's essential. I understand this, but still it was kind of like, really? Because you had to start over from the beginning 5 times. Like, each chapter you had to play from level 1 each time. So chapter 1 and 2 were actually very reminiscent of the first 2 games, because in chapter 1 you play as Ragnar and you're basically playing Dragon Quest 1 all over again. You're a warrior who you're a singular character who you do end up finding one additional ally who helps you out, but you don't control them. But like, it's just you're going around to different towns and, leveling up, buying new equipment, buying armor, buying weapons, and going along with the story until you end chapter 1. Then chapter 2, it's very reminiscent of Dragon Quest 2, where now you have a party of 3, a warrior, a mage, and a cleric. And I believe, yeah. And then you're starting level 1 and doing the same grind, town to town, armor, weapons, blah, blah, blah. Chapter 3, same thing, different characters. Chapter 4, same thing, different characters. Whichever one had Tornico, though, was actually pretty cool. Even though it did have that annoying buy low, sell high, it was a very interesting take on the same old that Dragon Quest has always done. So, but again, still, level 1, same grind. And then chapter 5 is when you finally get to play as, like, who you are, like the main hero. And that's, once you start chapter 5, that's when you begin to now, as the hero, go around to all these different towns and cities throughout the game that you have already experienced, but now you are the hero and you are finding all of these different people that you've already played as and adding them to your party. So it was a really, really cool, interesting, different take on the Dragon Quest formula that we've already gotten so used to. And the fact that we get to now experience these cities and worlds and different areas from different perspectives, from people who lived in these cities. Because say the game has, 5 different continents. Well, now you are experiencing each different continent as somebody who is a resident of that continent. And I thought it was really great. I thought it was awesome writing. I thought that this game really nailed it with, the different character developments, and you really do build kind of an emotional connection to each of the characters that you end up playing as and having in your party throughout the game. So there's no confusion as to who these people are and why they're in your party. Each individual character that is in your party has their own goal. They have their own mission that they're setting out on this quest with you on. And there's so many different, things to think about as you're exploring the world and thinking about, each individual character's, legacy and side quests and whatever. Like the two twins, they're on a revenge mission, to avenge their father. I thought that was great. So now their mission happens to coincide with yours because you're the hero. You're off to kill the big bad of the underworld, and they are also on their way to kill the big bad, but for a completely different reason. So I don't know. I thought it was really great. I thought the writing in this game was fantastic, but just to kind of wrap up what I didn't really care about for the game, the last two things I have on here, one of them kind of just goes with everything I said, just the grinding. It's the it's the long grinding of Metal King slimes in the end, because towards the end of the game, and this is, again, Dragon Quest is no stranger to this. Dragon Quest has always, since the beginning, had these metal slimes. And if you manage to kill one, it's a lot of XP. So say, like, if you kill a regular slime, it's like 5 XP or 2 XP or whatever the fuck it is. But if you kill a metal slime, it's like 1,000 XP. So it ramps it up. It really, like, so you want to try to find where the metal slimes are spawning and kill them when you get to a point where all the other enemies that you're walking around or whatever facing are just not giving you the amount of XP you need to level up. So you go after the metal slimes, but it's a chance that you can even hit one. They love to flee. You can't damage them with magic. You need to hit them with melee, and they're very hard to kill. So at the end of the game, when you're like level 30, 40 something, and you're just not getting a lot of XP from whatever enemies you're fighting, you have to end up grinding these Metal King slimes, and they give you like 30,000 XP per kill, but they're very hard to kill. So much like the buy low sell high mechanic, I spent a few hours just trying to grind the Metal King slimes. Like, I was just watching movies with my girlfriend, trying to kill these Metal King slimes just so I could get to a high enough level to even beat the game. So it becomes frustrating, and it gets old after a while, but it's a labor of love, because you know what you're getting when you do that. When you play one of these games, you know you're going to have to grind like that at some point. So the last thing that I didn't really care for in this game was the casino. And I feel like I looked up a lot of stuff online for this game in the casino, and because some people say that there's ways that you can kind of cheese your way through it or cheat it, and I couldn't. I didn't care. That some of the best items in the game are locked behind, like, they're in the casino. Like, you need to trade in casino tokens at the Boomtown Casino, basically like at endgame. I'll get into Boomtown later, but there's 2 different casinos in the game, and the first one doesn't really have anything good, but the second one is a casino that is part of a complete optional side quest thread. And if you happen to finish this whole side quest, basically like series of side quests, that's the word for it, you end up you get this casino, and there is no way in hell that you will ever make enough money to buy enough tokens for even one of these items. So you need to try to grind the casino and win enough tokens to unlock these items. And I just didn't find it worth it. I beat the game, and I beat the optional ending, like the alternate ending, without getting a single item from the casino. So I don't know. You could do it, I guess. It would make it a little bit easier, but I just didn't care to. But I don't like the games that are in it. You can gamble on monster fighting, which is a crapshoot. Like, you have to study and know what each type of monster is so that you can place your bet correctly. Or you can play this like blackjack, poker fucking mini game that I don't care to do. And then you also have slots, and the payouts for the slots are just terrible. So it's just not worth it. I feel like the casino in Dragon Quest IV is just absolutely not worth it. I don't really play a lot of casinos in any games, just because I don't think it's very worth it. But this one, I really I don't know. Some of the prizes, like, they're really cool, but for what you need to do to get them, it's just not worth it. You don't need them to beat the game, so who cares? But going on finally to what we like, and I know that I've kind of peppered in some of these things as I've talked about my dislikes, but and I feel like I am missing. I feel like I'm actually skipping over something I don't like, but I forgot to write it down, so I don't know. But going into what we do like about the game, um, starting off with the most obvious thing is the graphical enhancements, and I don't know really what this game looked like on the Super Nintendo. I did not play it on the DS either, but like I said, I played it on mobile. I played it on my iPhone, and I loved it. I really gotta say, before I even talk about the graphics, a lot of people, including a couple buddies of mine, that I've recommended this game, like series to the Dragon Quest games on mobile, they look at me like I'm crazy because they're like, oh, I don't like mobile games. I think mobile games are kind of dumb, whatever. Some of them are done well, and the Dragon Quest games, I gotta say, they're done well. It feels comfortable to play. They're convenient because they have the quick save feature now on the mobile version. So if you're walking around the world and you have to turn it off because whatever, like you could just kind of go into the options menu and quick save it and turn it off and then pick up right where you left off. So that's convenient, but it's just they made it comfortable to use. They give you different layouts on the phone that you can change it to, and it's very user friendly. It's super easy to understand, and it's just, I don't know, I liked it. I think that they did a really great job with it. But the graphical enhancements, like if you played 1, 2, and 3, mainly 1 and 2, you have to love pixel graphics. You have to love pixel art because I mean the games look great for what they are for what 1986. I think the first one came out 1985 or 86. And for what it was, for predating the first Final Fantasy, I mean, it looked great, and it still looks great. All these years later, looks crisp, but it is just it's just 8-bit graphics. It was an NES game of all things, so you have to respect where it was. But when it came to Dragon Quest IV, you could really notice the Super Nintendo difference because now, well, I guess I can't say Super Nintendo, but on mobile anyway. And I did see some DS footage and you can really see it. Now there are some actual 3D sort of graphics. There's legit walls. There's, three-dimensional sort of buildings. You can turn the camera and it looks great. You have more range of view. You can see things you couldn't see before. They really made use of the hardware enhancements and just the upgrades, and it looks great. Like, first thing I noticed about this game when I started it up was just how good it looked. And I mean, yeah, everything's real crisp now on iPhone all these years later, but I don't know. I thought it really stood out. I thought the graphical enhancements from the third game to the fourth game, they did a really good job. There's a big, big, big difference. But that's really all I have to say for that. I mean, you can notice it. You know what? To get a little bit deeper actually into it, I really enjoy playing these games in release order because you can see very distinctly the differences from game to game. And a couple of the places that I really noticed the graphical differences is not just the world design, which, yes, gets better with each game, hands down, no doubt. But with the character models, with the enemy models, like when you're actually in that combat screen, when you're looking at the enemies and kind of that like I don't know fucking words to use for this, but like how it's kind of like zoomed out and you know what it looks like when you're fighting the enemies in these Dragon Quest games. You guys know. But the animations that the characters make in the fourth game compared to the past 3 games, now the characters actually move, like if you look at the first game, it's kind of just like a static sprite and it might jiggle a little bit when it attacks. There might be some sparkles on the screen, whatever, like a little bit of a slash. And there's not really a whole lot to it. But like in the fourth game, Now the characters actually have an animation. Now they bite at you. Now they swing a hammer at you. Now they move around, and it actually looks like you're kind of fighting the enemy. It's cool. It looks like they're attacking you. It's definitely a big difference. And then also like with the spells, and not to mention, I mean, towards the end of the game, just some of the boss fights, the way that they start to look, they look really, really, really good. And I think it was the final boss, I think was fully rendered in 3D on mobile. I don't know what it looked like on the Super Nintendo, but it looked really good on mobile. But yeah, those are the graphical enhancements that I really had to point out. I didn't notice a whole lot of difference with the soundtracks. I mean, my girlfriend liked the soundtrack because it sounded like she wanted to go dancing in a castle. With some of the way when you're walking around the cities and the towns in the daytime. But yeah, that was really one of the first things I noticed. Moving on, I did touch on this when I was talking about dislikes with the different chapters, but this game had each main party member basically, except for Kirill and Boria. I'm probably butchering their names, but those two characters you don't really get a whole lot of backstory on. You don't really learn about them as characters. They're just kind of like support characters, but they are main party members. But every other main party member does have a really extremely interesting background. And I do have it written down word for word in my likes list. I have extremely interesting protagonists because they are like I said, the two twins, the dancers, they're on a vengeance mission. And then you have the exile, or the not exiled princess, but the ex-princess who always wanted to be a warrior. And then you have obviously your main hero, who you were the son, you're basically Jesus. Like you are the birth child of an angel who came down from the Zenithian castle and gave birth to a son from a fucking lumberjack. Like, come on. But everybody has a really interesting backstory, and it's fun to be able to see that play out through each chapter. So I talked about that in depth earlier. So now onto kind of like a goofy thing that I liked about this game, and same thing with the fifth game, and even with some of the previous games too. I like that when you walk around different cities and different towns, they type out, how the characters are talking, how each villager and king and whatever is talking, and they type it as if some of these characters have accents. So you have to read the dialogue as if some of these characters are talking with like a French accent. Like there's a whole city, there's a whole castle. I think it was a castle, but it was like this whole kingdom that they're forced to talk with these like fake French accents because whatever power took over the kingdom is evil and malicious and is forcing them to talk with these funny accents. And it's kind of funny the way that they make it play out. But yeah, the regional accents I thought was kind of interesting, and like all Dragon Quest games have done that. But the next thing I've written down on my likes is the first three chapters, like I said, are reminiscent of the first three games. So if you've played Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3, kind of like how the first game you play as one protagonist throughout the whole game. The second game you play as 3, and then in the third game you have a list. There's like 8 or 10 different people that you can have throughout your party that you find throughout the world, and that's just kind of like they paid homage to that in this game, which I thought was really cool. And then after that, excuse me, sorry, gotta get a drink. But after that, the thing that I have written down is the mini medals, which I thought I like the mini medals. I do. The third game had them as well, except in the third game, I believe you found a bunch of mini medals throughout the world, and you could use them as currency to buy objects, which it's not like that in the fourth game. I like the way the fourth game did it a little bit better, where there's a certain amount of mini medals that you can find throughout the map, and you can actually find more than the max number of mini medals you need to turn in to get the best items. Because there's this guy who sits in a little castle on an island, and you can go to him and trade in these mini medals. Once you get to chapter 5 and you get the ability to free roam, you can go to this guy's castle and I think it's Minikin's Dominion is what it's called. And you can go there and you talk to this guy and he gives you special awards, special rewards for collecting a certain amount of mini medals. So like you collect 10, you get like a shield, you collect 15, you get like a pair of pants, you collect 20, so et cetera, et cetera. Up to, I believe, 60. There's different prizes at different numbers, but I think I collected like 63, and then he was like, "Oh, I have nothing else to give you. That's it. Thank you." And then that was it. But you do get some really good items from giving him the mini medals. You get some nice armors and weapons and special things that you can use to enhance your party. So definitely, I like the implementation of the mini medals, and it just makes things a little bit easier. Like if you don't want to go to the casino and grind, you can go and look for some of these mini medals. You don't get the same rewards, but you do get some pretty good rewards. Next up, I have world design written down, and I've always liked the Dragon Quest world design, even with the first game, but how simple it was. Like, I'm going to go a little bit deep into this one because, like, I'm going to talk about the first game for a minute. In the first game, the world design was very basic, all things considered. So you start out in a town, and you walk outside of the town, and you start to walk around the area around the town, but there's no definitive borders, really. Like, you don't know where you're going to walk and the next difficulty of enemies is going to start. But in the first game, you could kind of gauge it by, like, there's a lot of rivers and some bridges that cross those rivers, and once you cross that bridge, that's kind of when the difficulty is going to ramp up, is once you, because that's like the most definitive line you have in that game. With the fourth game, it's kind of similar. It's now you have more mountains that you can walk around. You have more ocean. You have more islands. You have things you have a more spread apart world. You have a bigger world, really. And it's very similar, again, to the first game and the previous 3 games, where you cross a bridge into the next kind of state or country or whatever main landmass, and the enemies get a little more difficult. You go into caves and they get a little bit more difficult there, and there's certain caves where they straight up, the characters tell you, like, hey, don't go in here, it's certain death, and you obviously know that that's going to be a more challenging cave. You can find stronger enemies in there that will give you better rewards and more XP, and so you kind of just have to explore. But I really liked the world design in this game. I very much liked the way that they took advantage of the graphical enhancements, and they made really cool caves with new angles, and not everything is just grid based now. Not everything is just up and down, left and right. It's now you can go 8 different directions, and they made it look really good. The caves were great. The new puzzles, the tile puzzles were great. Stepping on I feel like the kind of tile puzzles where you step on a tile and it takes you on those arrow tiles all throughout a floor until it drops you down a pit. Like those have been synonymous with 8-bit RPGs forever. And once again, you'll find them in this game, but I thought they did a good job. I don't know. I just thought that the world design in this game was very, very good. And I liked that, you start out by just being able to walk everywhere. So you walk throughout the world, you go through caves, you go through teleporters, you go through a statue that walks through a river. That was pretty cool. But you find different ways to traverse the map, and then eventually you learn you're able to fast travel. So now you don't have to walk back and forth between every kingdom to try to follow these clues and do whatever you got to do to get to the next step in the story. Now you can just fast travel, but then all right, sorry everybody. I keep having some technical difficulties with my microphone. But anyway, so eventually you unlock the ability to travel by boat, and that allows you to now travel to different islands and broken apart areas of the map that you weren't able to get to before. And then later on, you unlock the hot air balloon, which now you can explore everything. So once you unlock the hot air balloon, that pretty much opens the rest of the world to you. And it's really cool the way that they design the progression of everything, like the tasks and the quests and the things you have to do in order to unlock these next things. It's classic Square Enix JRPG, and I love it. I'm a huge fan of this. So, and then eventually you finally unlock the what's it called? Is it Zenith? I don't remember. You get all the Zenithian armor, and then you can go up into the castle in the sky, and that's great. And it's just, I loved a lot of the way that this game, just the pacing of it, the story of it, the writing of it. I thought that they did a really, really great job. I can't give this game enough praise. If you are a fan of classic JRPGs and you're looking for a good one to play, I recommend this one. If you got a phone, get it on your phone. It's a fun experience. Like I said, they did a really great job porting this to the phone. But the writing of this game, I cannot praise it enough, because they give you a really, really compelling storyline that you play all the way up until the very end. And we're gonna start to get a little bit into spoiler territory here, but it's very classic RPG. You have this guy who, he's on the search for the ultimate power, and he's trying to find he's uncovering the secret of evolution, which is a science that has been long buried for generations, for centuries, and he finally unlocks it, and he goes off to his secret lair to become the strongest, most evolutionized being in the world, and he's the most powerful, blah 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 blah. But that's classic JRPG. So you have this guy who starts as nothing, then becomes basically a god. And like that one meme out there, if you know what I'm talking about, it's RPGs be like, mission 1, rescue this cat, last mission, kill God. Like, that's what this is. And it was done really well, it was written really well, it was very compelling. But what I really want to praise is the fact that they do have a secret alternate ending. And for those of you who don't want to hear this, probably skip about 5 minutes. So the alternate ending I thought was fantastic, because the final, dungeon is a really, really well laid out dungeon. You go through you go to this underground area. You go to this secret, cave, underground, whatever. And you have to jump down this hole that was created by Castle Zenith in the sky, and then it drops you into enemy territory, and then you have to go, walk around to these 4 different areas and kill these bosses, these mini bosses. And once you do that, then it drops the shield that's protecting the main castle that's hiding the bad guys. So you go into this main castle, you make your way through there, and then once you do that, then you go into the volcano, blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to spoil much, so I'm just saying blah, blah, blah. Then you make your way through the castle, you get through the castle, and then you go into the volcano. Now you're at the last boss fight. So once you've killed the final boss of this game, then game over, you win, you've stopped the world's evil. Congratulations. But throughout the game, they have different parts of this game have referenced this Yggdrasil leaf, or this Yggdrasil flower, that is this magical item that blossoms every 1,000 years and on the Yggdrasil tree, which is something that you have to go to earlier in the game to get one of the special pieces of armor. And once you've beaten the game, then there's sort of like you can pick up where you left off. And the game doesn't really tell you that there's a new area. You have to talk to some specific NPCs. I just Googled it. I'll be honest. I Googled it because I wanted to know. And you have to talk to some specific NPCs, and then they kind of guide you. They direct you towards this one area towards the end of the game that you probably explored, but there wasn't really anything there for you. But once you go there now there's like a secret tunnel that just opened up. And so you're able to go in there, and it's one final big, long, really cool dungeon. And at the end of this dungeon, there's these two enemies that are arguing basically like what's better, the chicken or the egg. And it's really funny if you read the dialogue. But once you beat them, then they say, "Oh, congratulations, that was a really good fight, but why are we arguing?" Whatever, like there's some dialogue, and then they basically make the Yggdrasil flower bloom on top of the Yggdrasil tree. So you go back to the elf tree in the middle of that desert, and you go all the way back up, and you get that Yggdrasil flower. Now you go back to Rose Hill, where, if you remember from earlier in the game, Sorrow the Manslayer built that tower, and he was hiding that elf with the ruby tears. So now you bring that Yggdrasil flower to her gravesite, and you plant, you plant the flower on the gravesite, whatever. You resurrect Rose. So you resurrect that elf that cried ruby tears. And then she has some dialogue that says, "Oh wow, like not all humans are bad. We have to go find Sorrow the Manslayer and stop him." So now you have to go back to that final end game dungeon, except now you don't have to kill the 4 mini bosses. You can kind of just like walk straight through to the main final boss. And instead of doing that really long, difficult final boss fight again, now there is some special dialogue between Rose and Sorrow the Manslayer, and she kind of like breaks him of being evil, and then he actually joins your party, and then you go and do this special like alternate ending, and it's really well written. It was if you paid attention to the dialogue throughout the game, you'll realize like why it's so special and cool that they did what they did with that secret ending. And I commend them for it. I bravo, had a great time. It was very enticing. I was really sucked into it. I had a great time. But that's really the main stuff that I wanted to touch on with this game. And I really had, like I said, I can't say it enough. I had a very fun time playing it. I'm actually, right after I finished it, I went into the 5th game, because this is the Zenithian trilogy. So games 4, 5, and 6 follow a like a linear storyline. So I like that Dragon Quest seems to do that with these games. They seem to follow trilogies. They make trilogies, and I didn't know that they did that. I thought it was kind of like Final Fantasies. So I thought that like each game was its own independent story. You didn't need to play any other game to understand it. But, and I mean, you can play each Dragon Quest game and enjoy it thoroughly without knowing what the hell's going on. Like, I played Dragon Quest 3 first because I thought I wouldn't enjoy Dragon Quest 1 because it was like too basic, too old, whatever. And so and then I looked at Dragon Quest 2. I thought same thing. I was like, I'm not really interested. Dragon Quest 3, I looked at some pictures of it online and thought, you know what? This looks really good. Like, this looks cool. I'm going to try it and see what I think. And then once I played through 3, and then I looked it up online after, I was like, oh, wait, this was the prequel to 1? I was like, well, now I have to play. Now I have to play 1 and understand just what the hell is going on. Like, what did I just do to this world? Because this, like, there was so much to it that I was like, this just, it took me away into this fantastical world, and I need to know more. So that's just what Dragon Quest 4 did to me. And I'm right into Dragon Quest 5 now because I need to know, first off, am I playing a prequel or a sequel right now? I don't know, but it's really, really good. So the slap rating on this thing, I'm just gonna do it out of 10. I don't feel like you know what? No, I'll do it out of 60, because you need 60 mini medals to get the final item. And I'll say, out of 60 mini medals for this game, for Dragon Quest 4, I'm gonna give it 55. I'm gonna give it that high of a score because it's such a good game to just even play passively. Like, if you just enjoy turn-based combat and you just want to get on and do a little bit of grinding and hang out, or like, if you only want to play it while sitting on the toilet for like 5-10 minutes at a time, like, you're gonna be playing this game for a long time because it's like a 40-hour game. But it's really good, and I think you could pick it up on mobile for like $15. I think that's what I got it for, which, it's a little bit much, I guess, for a 40-year-old game almost. But it's if you like these kinds of games, I know I said it 1,000 times. I sound like a broken record, but they did a really great job porting it to mobile. It's very accessible. It's really easy to play. The controls are comfortable, and they're even a little bit customizable to whatever's comfortable for you. Um, yeah, I give it a 55 out of 60. I had a very fun time playing it. I had a very fun time talking about it, and I am very glad to be doing these episodes again. I miss doing this. I really did. And I know I'm rambling a little bit now because I'm a little rusty. It's also a little bit hard to talk to yourself for, an hour, but it's fun. And again, thank you everybody for all the support, for the time that I said I had to take a hiatus. I just needed a break, and it may happen again, but I hope not. I hope that I have little things a little bit more under control, and we'll see what happens when I go back to school. But I'm definitely looking forward. I have a couple games up my sleeve that I'm ready to talk about, and I will be bringing out a couple of more episodes. So again, thank you all so much for the kind, love and support, and I look forward to talking to you. So if you want to talk about Dragon Quest, if you want to talk about any video games, feel free to message me. You can find me on Instagram at TheBardsOfGaming. You can find me on Twitter or X at 2bardsofgaming with the number 2. You can find links to all my socials at thebardsofgamingpodcast.com. That's where you can also find links to other episodes as well as merchandise. And I think I am also going to try to start streaming more. You can find me on Twitch at Robert, Robeair. And I know I keep saying that. I did stream quite a bit. I got into Phasmophobia a little while ago with a buddy of mine. So we do stream some of that. I've also been playing some Small Land with my friend. If any of you are into those, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids kind of survival games, that one's a really, really good one. So, yeah. Thank you all so much for listening, and I will catch you next time. Peace.